Waking up and turning first to my cell phone that rests on my pillow, I turn off the sleep app and check for messages and alerts. I find notifications from several Facebook groups and my friends. I check the family group chat for updates on my aging parents. I check my email for messages from clients and the few friends who communicate there rather than social media. And yes, I check my online dating profiles, although I am considering closing those accounts. This sounds amazingly similar to the morning Tim Raynor describes in his series Full Cult and Social Media, Life in a Virtual Panopticon. Especially in the past 5 years, my digital identity has exploded. At that time, I moved to a new state with my youngest son. We knew no one in the area and began school and friends there and jobs there, but we kept in touch via the internet and cell phone with friends and colleagues from our previous home. After a few years, we moved yet several more times, and each time became more digitized. As Tim Raynor mentions, this digital identity can lead one to feel like an actor on a stage, playing to an audience. I find this especially interesting as I began my college career as a theater performance major. My father got his degree and his PhD while I was a teenager, and he became a psychologist then, so I was quite involved learning about psychology with him. I tend to reflect on things, and I see all of life as acting, at least to a certain extent. We think about how will our outfit fit with the persona we project? How should we act in a specific situation? Returning to dating, I have been reminded far more often than I would like how we craft a persona to project to others. I do not see a huge difference to doing this digitally and doing it in person. I think the biggest differences in my self-censoring for my digital persona and my self-censoring for an in-person persona are the size of the audience and the time frame in which it occurs. As Tim tells us in his article, and the idea originated with Full Cult and was applied to Twitter by Peggy Ornstein, we operate with the prospect of constant surveillance. And in the digital world, that surveillance is by far more people than we would ever perform for in person. We also find, as Abba Dawarsar mentions in her TED Talk, Life in the Digital Now, that time becomes distorted digitally. We can now measure small time frames, and we can live for the future response to our posts, rather than just living in the moment and then reflecting, and when we have time, sharing this later. I think I am very much the same person digitally, and I think many other people are as well. I have a very different experience than that described by Sherry Turkle in her TED Talk, Connected Yet Alone. I think she's equating technology that connects humans with robotic technology too closely. I have two sons who are 10 years apart. One was raised in the cell phone era and one without. I find the cell phone has really kept my younger son and I much closer. You do lose some nuances via texting, but the frequency and the immediacy are more important. And since we have a long, close relationship with a lot of history, we are able to grasp the nuances. I have met online several people who I have gone on to create very in-depth relationships with. Texting and messaging have progressed to phone calls and finally in-person meetings. I just returned from a wedding in California where I stayed with a person whom I consider one of my best friends. It was the first time she and I ever met in person. I did find her to be slightly shyer and slightly more reserved than I expected, but otherwise she was exactly the same person I have known and messaged for years. She was my guest at the wedding. She let me stay at her house. Her adult son was just as I expected. I met her mother. We spent time sightseeing together, and I can't wait to host her if she's able to make it to the Midwest. We chat online almost daily, several hours a day. She is not the only person that this has been true for. I have also run for a position with a political group totally online, and I met with all the other members of my slate online and conference calls. I have two online sons, one's from India, one from Lebanon, whom I've mentored, and I'm very proud of their growth and maturity. I plan to visit my Lebanese son in Greece later this year. When I was a high school student in the days before my school even had computers, I was very involved with the local mock UN group. I have always been interested in international political peace causes, and this technology has now enabled me to connect to them in ways I would never have imagined possible before. Without technology, and specifically social media, I imagine I would be more isolated and alone. I am shy. I find social media to be a great way for me to meet people and make friends. As Eli Pariser mentions in his TED Talk, Beware Online Filter Bubbles, I do worry that there is a tendency to only see things online that agree with our viewpoint. I try to be aware of this, but I know I am as susceptible as everyone else. I think this concern helps me to reflect before I post, to search for more information before taking a stand. I think my online persona is somewhat more gregarious than my in-person persona. But at the end of the day, we're always projecting, and we're always only seeing a reflection of ourselves. No one can really see all of us. So the question is the technology mirror a funhouse mirror or a full-length bedroom mirror? I think we can choose which mirror.